It's the place where senior living insights and entertainment collide, like two star-crossed lovers meeting at a polka dance. This is the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast, hosted by Jeff Bell of Bell PR and Marketing. Senior living marketers, put your hands together for the host with the most. Okay, maybe not, but he tries. Jeff Bell.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome back to another edition of the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast. We have been off since late last year. Business has been busy, which has kept us from recording for a while, so I'm glad to be back in the quote-unquote studio, recording another edition, and I'm very excited about our guest today. I think everybody in the senior living sphere is going to really enjoy this. Because it's a little bit different than the conversations that we've had prior to this. So my guest is Andrew Hall. He's the co-founder of a really, really cool company called No Story Lost. And they are actually based out of Canada. So you are officially our first guest that is a neighbor to the north, Andrew. So welcome to the program.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be maybe the first international guest. It's exciting. I'm happy to talk.
Hopefully the first of many, but yeah, first international guest. So No Story Lost, just to sort of introduce our listeners, is a really cool concept. And for anyone who's got parents or grandparents out there, and you've ever thought to yourself, boy, I would love if there was a way to have the stories they've told over the years, or maybe they've never told their story, a way that we could keep that someday when they're gone. For their loved ones to have an opportunity to always have that keepsake and give them an opportunity to still tell the story while they're around, while they're with us. That was kind of the crux of what No Story Lost is about. And Andrew, I'll let you kind of go into it, but essentially it's an opportunity for folks to have a coffee table book that is full of those stories, full of pictures, full of all of those memories that otherwise would be lost, hence the name of
yeah, exactly.
Tell us how the idea got started, and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing so far.
Yeah, wow, you hit on lots of topics I'm excited to dig into. We could probably talk for a long time about a bunch of them, but yeah, let's start with the story like you mentioned. And you hit the nail on the head early on, which is, if your family is anything like our family, we would always talk about, man, we need to get Pop's stories down. We call our grandpa Pop. We need to get his stories down, before he's gone. He has the wildest stories. He sings songs all the time. So it doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, he would tell you a story. He'd stop and tell you about the time he was driving down a mountain road and his gas tank fell out of his car and he had to climb back up the mountain to get his gas tank. Or he'd sing us, the Big Rock Candy Mountain song, or tell us how he used to sell Christmas trees in town for 25 cents a tree. So I think most people have at least one parent or grandparent who has stories like that. But the conversation was always, we got to do this. But there was never the click to make us actually do it. And so finally, I can't remember what pushed us over the edge, but we eventually sat down. And I was like the fastest typist in the family. So I sat down with Grandpa and just typed and typed and typed while he spoke, and quickly learned that is a challenge to do it that way. And on we went, capturing a couple hours of his stories, eventually learning to start recording them rather than typing live. And finally, we put together his book. So this is a copy of Pops's book. And we realized that this might be a service we can provide to other people, because it was such a labor of love trying to figure out, how are we going to record it? How are we going to transcribe it? How are we going to type it? Chapters, pictures, then how do we get it printed and all that? So we realized if that was that hard for us, if we can perfect it, maybe we can build that service for other people. So that's how it all started. And here's some of the stories and photos from this book. So this is a real treasure for us now, because Pop did pass away a couple of years ago. And so now this is the closest thing to being able to hear his old stories. And we still have the audio clips too, which are so funny to listen back to him actually tell the stories in his own voice. And the book's great too.
And of course, the folks who are listening to this podcast work in the world of senior living, and so we interact even more closely. We don't just have a relative whose stories we love. We've got folks at the senior living communities that either we serve as Bell PR and marketing, or our clients work directly with these folks. And I'm sure the wheels are turning right now as people are listening, saying, "What a great opportunity here to tell these stories in a way that we can hold on to." I'm thinking, public radio in the States here has done some what they call StoryCorps stuff, where they've recorded the audio versions of stories, but you've almost taken it to an entirely new level here, where it's not, we'll do the interviews and the recordings and things like that, but we've also got this opportunity to put all of these old photos together into a book where, the great grandkids someday, the great grandkids have an opportunity to know who someone was that they were related to in a really intimate way.
Totally. Yeah, really intimate. And I think one of the things you just touched on there was, I mentioned the audio clips, and they are great. Maybe we crack them out once a year or something, but it's sort of like your holiday photos. You take them, and then unless you're really on top of it, do you do something with them? And so the coffee table book is a nice piece that pulls that together. So this is what our books look like now, a little bit bigger and more colorful than our originals. But this is something that we hope families are just like leaving out around their house so that friends and family can like take a look through, versus, right now your photo albums, or if we had those audio clips, they might be hidden away a little bit more of the time. But yeah, you also mentioned like how people who are listening can think about this too. And that's one thing we haven't explored too much yet, but I'd love to think more about, is like the people who work with seniors, not just their families. How might we be able to get involved in a whole bunch of different ways? And that's a world I don't know a ton about, to be honest. I kind of came at it more from the family side.
Yeah, and of course, I live and breathe it every day, and this is probably a good time to mention to our listeners too. We always post our podcast video version on our YouTube channel, which is the Bellwether Senior Living channel. So if you happen to be catching this listening and you're going, "Gosh, I really wish I could see one of those books and see what it looks like," check it out. Subscribe so you never miss a podcast. Make sure you get the video version as well. And certainly you can reach out to us directly, info@bellpr.org. And we will, if you have interest in this in any way, shape, or form, we will connect you to Andrew and his team and try to work something out. But to your point, and kind of building on what you just said, the senior living world is, whether you're talking here in the States, in Canada, really internationally, is just ripe with stories. And that is, to kind of tell my own story, it's why I left the world of journalism and got really heavily involved in senior living marketing. Because when I worked in the world of journalism, I covered a lot of different stories, but not everyone wants to write about the crime beat or what's going on with traffic laws and things like that. I was really at my heart of hearts, a storyteller. And what better place to find that than the world of senior living, where when I first got involved, I was meeting people who were, they were at the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. They knew Charles Lindbergh, or whatever the case may be. And I just thought, what a great opportunity to be able to tell these stories through the power of public relations in a way they may not otherwise be able to be told. But even that only gives us a snippet. It's someone's memories of a certain period in their life, but it's not the full picture. And I think that's what you all are offering, which is really, really great. And you and I have talked before about what a great opportunity this would be for a senior living community to maybe offer in part of a partnership, offer as a move-in incentive, or as part of something. Or if you're a senior living person listening to this and you're thinking of a resident who would love an opportunity like this, again, info@bellpr.org, reach out to us and let us know, and we will connect you with the folks at No Story Lost. But so many great opportunities here. And I'm thinking back even at my own story, if I was going to leave something for my children, because I think when we tell our stories, sometimes we tell the Reader's Digest version, and if you have someone there who can kind of probe a little bit and ask some questions, then you get some info that you otherwise wouldn't get. And I would imagine you've probably found that in the interviews that you're doing with clients.
Yes, absolutely. So just to touch on your first point, yeah, we've done lots of work with families. So if anyone's listening and can think of that perfect person who needs to do this, that's awesome. And then secondly, yeah, if someone works in the industry and can think of ways that a care home or facility might be able to offer this to any of their residents, that would be amazing too. And again, that's something we haven't explored too much yet, but we'd really like to see how, again, that might be an incentive or a long-term resident gift or something like that. But you mentioned kind of depth, which I wanted to talk about a little bit. Getting to those richer stories beyond the Reader's Digest version. I'm curious if you've heard of a word called Sonder before.
I know Saunter. I don't know about Sonder.
Sonder is Sonder. It's one of my favorite words in the English language. You should look up the full definition, but to paraphrase it, it basically is that feeling you get when you are on a busy train or in the middle of a mall or a square, and you pause for a second and look around and realize that every little person you see is living this amazing, deep, rich life, just as deep as your own, with all the same desires and wishes and hopes and pains that you have. And I think for us, it's easy to think about seniors and forget that they've lived 60, 70, 80, 90 years with every bit of depth and intrigue that your life has. And so often when we hear, little bits of stories like, what did you do for work? Or where did you grow up? We get that first level story. And maybe you prod and get a little bit deeper or ask a fun question like a favorite song or something. But really, like if you're anything like our family, we kind of just have that surface level conversation over the dinner table or at holidays. But it's rare that we really get that opportunity to hear those stories and then let them finish those and then go a level deeper and then a level deeper and hear stories that they've maybe never told before or they haven't even thought to tell because no one asks them. And so, in 4 or 6 hours of interviewing, our interviewers build a lot of rapport really quickly. And I think probably people in the industry have seen how that's possible with some clients and residents. They might want a friend and they just want to get talking, and you can build rapport really quickly if you ask the right questions. So we've had a couple interviewers who have become friends with the clients, and even though they live in different cities and they visited each other. And the amazing part is really when they get to those deeper stories and find out things that their families didn't know about. And so then when the book gets opened and the child is actually learning stories they didn't even know existed, that's when it gets really powerful and really fun.
And I was going to ask you about that. You sort of partially answered it, but do you ever get a pushback of, I don't know that dad or grandpa or grandma or mom is going to be comfortable talking about these stories with a complete stranger? And if you do get that pushback, how do you sort of address it?
Yeah, totally. We do. There's a couple different things. Firstly, we're still chatting mostly over the phone. And we find that that's like the right level of intimacy versus a video chat, or, we don't go in person because we don't have staff in every city, but people are pretty comfortable over the phone. One thing that helps is sometimes the storyteller will have their son or daughter or relative in the room or on the phone with them. So then there's kind of a bridge that makes it a little bit more comfortable. One of our early clients, Steph, she tried to ask her dad to do a project, and he kind of had that reaction like, I'm not telling my stories to a stranger. And then she kind of paused and asked him again and said, this isn't just for you. This is for me and my kids, and I want them to be able to get to know you. So, as a favor to the family and to your future grandkids, like, could you put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and give this a chance? And again, you need to break through the ice a little bit, but usually within an hour or two, people are pretty comfortable. So that's helped as well. And then, Steph's dad did pass away last year. And so she's just so grateful to have his story down now. I think it was meaningful when she read it. She said she cried happy tears, which is always our goal. But then, to have it now that he's gone has been so important to her.
And so when you've gone through this process and, you've been at it long enough now that you can refer to someone as an early interview versus someone more recent, that there is clearly that opportunity that you probably didn't even envision when you started this thing of, we're getting to know people that we otherwise would not have gotten to know at all. We may have never encountered these people at all. And you learn about not just individual people, but people from different parts of your country, different parts of the United States, and all of these unique experiences. It's got to be so rewarding just in itself, being able to have those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as far as I can tell, a dream job for our writers and storytellers and interviewers, because they have maybe a creative writing degree, journalism, English, and all the ones we've hired are also passionate about dealing with and chatting with and getting to know seniors. So basically their job is to chat for a few hours and then discover these amazing stories and then use their writing muscles to write them into a beautiful narrative. So they're loving that, and they get to hear all the depth of these amazing stories. And I hear kind of some of the highlights of those. And you kind of touched on this earlier, like if we're going back 100 years, the world was so different. So anything from their childhood is so interesting to imagine life back then, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And the world was a little bit smaller. So there's some cool stories that way too. But yeah, we've had amazing immigration stories, like daring escapes from countries to move to America. Good like all-American stories as well. Lots of different angles. Even the most shy storyteller, like we had this woman who said, I don't really have much to tell, but I'll try. And then within the first interview, she's talking about how she was in England in World War II, and a bomb came through their ceiling, crashed through the upper floor, landed in their living room, didn't explode. And then they had to move to the neighbor's house for a few weeks until the bomb squad could come move it out. Like, these things are mind blowing to us. And that was someone who said she didn't have any stories.
Yeah, yeah. And you think to yourself, I guess to them it was normal. So maybe it wasn't a story, but the average person, thankfully, has not had a bomb fall in their living room.
Right.
I want to pivot a little bit here and talk about an interesting opportunity you had. To our folks who are listening in the States, they would think of it as Shark Tank, but I believe it's called Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version. And you actually had the opportunity to be on that program. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, that's right. That's a show. I mean, we've watched both shows, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, for years. Jeremy's my co-founder. He and I are business grads, so we're into the nerdy business side of things as well. So we've always loved the show, always loved watching it, and it had always been a dream to get on it. We thought it'd be a great opportunity to tell the country what we're up to when it can be difficult to get the message out. There's obviously constant media flying at everybody. So we thought it'd be a fun way to do that, and a potential way to grow the business too. So we applied last summer, and then we're surprised to hear back and have an interview. So we got a video interview with one of the producers and told them all about what we do. I was in this same office actually, and one of the most important phone calls of my career to date, and it turned out to be window washing day. So I was looking out the window while some man came up and was like, ee, on the windows and slamming into it, like just trying to make sure things were quiet. But apparently it went well enough because we got through to the next round. And then the producers asked us, if you were to get on the show, is there some way that you could be, more exciting than just a verbal pitch? What could you do? We thought about bringing in one of our grandparents to tell a bit of their story and how things happened. But the other idea we had was that we could get in touch with one of the dragon's parents and interview them and bring a book. So we did that. And they helped us produce this. So they connected us to Manjeet's dad, and we did a discreet interview for an hour and then produced a short book for her, because we were working on a really short timeline to our filming date. So then when we showed up, we did this reveal on the episode, how the product gets demonstrated. And we said, here's our books, but one of them is extra special. Manjeet, this is actually a story about your dad. And so she didn't know it was coming, and she opened it up and started crying, and really saw the power of what we could do, more so than if it was just a generic book. So she loved it. And she was the one dragon to make an offer, actually. So it was really cool. It was nerve-wracking. It was fast-paced. I've done a lot of business pitches, but It was 35 minutes of just rapid fire questions,
Yeah.
a little bit less organized than a normal pitch, but really good experience.
Have you seen a fair amount of growth since that appearance, either just organic growth or anything that resulted from the program itself?
Yeah, I do think this show, I'm not sure about Shark Tank. I think Dragon's Den has declined a little bit from its heyday when everyone was kind of watching it weeknights together. But we saw a big boost in traffic and a bunch more people interested in projects. So the fall was busy for us in that way. It was really good.
Well, we definitely don't have quite the same following on this podcast yet as Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. But
Yeah.
if anyone wants to get in touch with you to learn more, obviously they can reach out to us. But how can they find you either online, connect with you in another way? Go ahead and share that info.
Yeah. Well, we learned the hard way from our previous business to not have different handles on different platforms because we couldn't get the ones we wanted. But in this case, it's easy. NoStoryLost.com, No Story Lost on Instagram, No Story Lost on Twitter. So pretty easy to find us. With the title.
Easy stuff. Andrew Hall is the co-founder of No Story Lost. NoStoryLost.com. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Twitter. And you can also reach out to us, info@bellpr.org. We'd be happy to connect you. And Andrew, love the conversation and look forward to maybe future conversations down the road as you continue to evolve the business. I think it's a really cool thing you're doing. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. Thanks so much for having me on. And we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you. Take care. And for Tom Watts, for producer, engineer Julie Montoya Houston, I'm Jeff Bell, and you've been listening to the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast.
Thank you.